Wait for Stephen.
No, I think, we're recording anyway.
Exactly. So, okay. For the agenda for today, I wanted to do two things. One is understanding each other's scopes of expressibility of the model. I'm not saying we have to agree on something. It's more about seeing where everybody wants to go in terms of expressiveness, like how dig we deep, or how dig they want to deep, and where other people want to stop and say this is useful enough for me. And the second thing I wanted to encourage is draw model instances. And I think we should set up a Miro board together or anything similar, and have at least this tool running so we can easily work on different model instances. I think that makes the discussions a bit easier. Yeah, right. So I think we can start with how deep people want to dig with their projects. For me personally, I can start. I'm actually not sure because I'm still trying to figure out what we need for a tool to be useful for people, and when it's just too much. I'm not sure where to draw the line yet. I'm learning so many new things in the discussions that I'm not sure anymore. So does anybody of you have a strong opinion on that?
Plenty, of course.
Yeah, so
I'll just say that I haven't been able to be present much the past 2 weeks. I've been pretty swamped with work. So a window suddenly lined up on my calendar with the call. So I just thought I'd pop back in and say hi to you guys. So I feel like I'm again appearing in the middle of a river of an ongoing conversation. So I'll sit back and listen for a bit at first.
Yeah, that's fine.
I have very strong opinions. I mean, not to say that they're fully formed, but I have really strong goals in mind, which is that I'm not sure which ones to focus on really, but like one of the main problems I'm trying to solve are somehow creating a common fact database, given that there's no such thing as a fact exactly, but yet there's close enough in day-to-day life that we should have it. So, I want to create something where you can resolve disputes. A friend of mine once made a comment that he refuses to have any conversation anymore that's like, oh, who was that in that movie, or who did, anything that could be solved by a Google search. He didn't want to waste time on discussing, but I feel like that's how it should be for a lot of our debates too, right? I think there's a whole area of debate that is still relevant, which will be trade-offs and values and those kind of choices. But when you're talking about what happened in that video, or you're talking about who said what, or you're talking about, I think these should be resolvable with a quick lookup, and I think it's a question of information architecture to some degree, right? An information architecture designed to accumulate or centralize the information on a given topic in one place, and yet still handle open debate about them, right? So that's kind of part of the use case that I'm going for. And I see it like online. I want to be able to, when I see a fact, that when I see somebody saying something that I think is just wholly wrong, I want to be able to go look it up in a second, see if I was wrong or they're wrong, and then point them right at it and say, you au contraire, whatever. Those are some of them. Yeah.
Is there anything you explicitly exclude that's like you don't want to do?
No, it's more a question of the trade-off of complexity versus usability. And I think a lot of the complexity can be hidden through a good interface designs. And that's why I lean towards more formalism, because I think the more and more I look at it, the more I see that certain things cannot be resolved without the formalism that leads to allowing you to make claims be canonical, right? To detect that two claims are the same and gather all the arguments in one place. So, I want it to go as far as it needs to go. And I'm at this point willing to limit the scope of this to not capture every single case, which means, and from my perspective, unfortunately, that means, I'm not an academic. So I don't have a good vision on how far those cases go. I know that the more we dive into it, the more cases pop up that need to be incorporated. And, I see that on the one hand, a lot of academic debates that are less likely to be supported from this perspective because they require more meta features, shall we say, end up being, what I guess sort of what Marc-Antoine would call the atoms. They're the whole point of academia is to create the solid foundation on which to build everything else. And so if I'm excluding the solid foundation, I'm kind of self-defeating. So I understand there's huge trade-offs there, and I'm trying to, that's where I'm trying to see is, is this really necessary? Is this really necessary? And I think we need concrete examples. But on the other hand, if we're talking about building this system iteratively, a system like Kialo barely scratches the surface. So if we increment in terms of just how formal we can get, in each increment, we're already doing better than what's there before, right? So I do kind of think to some degree we could increment our implementation of the formalism, but I'm not sure the balance yet. I mean, there's other use cases, but I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, go ahead, Marc-Antoine.
Yeah, I guess I could go next unless Stephen, you want to. Interesting that you started with facts, because of course, I keep saying there's kind of two levels of debate. One is about facts and one is about, opinions, desires, intentions, values. And even the facts are contentious, right? I mean, when you say, is this true or is this not true? I mean, that was original role of Snopes, and it's not obvious because search won't always lead you in the right place, but it can in some cases. When Felix asked the question yesterday, I was thinking, okay, what is my overall goal for the thing? And I wrote something about it, and I want a map of position on issues, questions, beliefs and their justifications, actions and their consequences, values and balance and trade-offs. And such a map would allow, of course, local exploration, have a starting point, look around, and what are obstacles, as in a map, where's the mountain? Where are the unanswered counter arguments to a certain position, or why we shouldn't take a certain action, or why we don't know something. View alternatives, and for me, broadening, and that's one thing I have about the purely argumentative. I think argumentative is important. It's about, sometimes evidence for truth and facts, because that is a component. But sometimes it's about saying, well, it could also be this, and getting people to see there's another way to view this, or maybe this is the core fact, but this is how somebody interprets it, or in what category, in what pattern somebody fits it as. And so broadening the viewpoint for me is a core goal. And kind of systemic view. What are systemic effects? What are expected impact of actions? That's the prediction market, but looking at feedback loops instead of just the local view. So I started with local exploration, but kind of broadening from there to seeing a broader view. So perspective is a key goal for me. And of course, when you have a map, you want to know where you are on the map. Where are my questions being debated, and where are my specific beliefs if I've already formed them? Where do they fall? And my actions, if I have plans, what does it fit in the matrix of expected consequences and resources? And so this is a bit broader than quite a bit broader than what's true and what's not. Though I agree that what's true and what's not is kind of a basis for everything else also. And yeah, the weaponized information being what it is, it's an important basis, but it's also one with weaponized information, it's going to be debated, and going to the map won't give us the answer, it will give us what the state of the debate is. Function of the map, enrichment, of course, saying, well, this is missing on the map, please add it. And that means progressive formalization, because not everybody will know the the formal map making process. So that means we need to have a way to make suggestions, which may be initially harder to locate on the map until they're formalized, but they still should be there somehow. And still among the goals of the map, curated local visual maps, or kind of here's a stylized, here's what you need to know about this for pedagogical purpose, and bidirectional connection with narrative content, because not everything is a map. So you have a text, and putting the arguments from the text into the map, and being able to navigate from the text to the map, and from the map to the text that gave rise to putting that thing on the map, or text, or whatever other document. So that's kind of the global scope. The whole, there's two elephants in the room. So one is facts versus viewpoints and perspectives. I think viewpoints and perspectives are important, because interpretation of facts is as important as facts. Of course, I'm always speaking about the meta arguments, because does this really fit this pattern? You get into meta arguments really quickly. Is this really a case of that? Because when we make arguments, we're saying A is X because it belongs to class Y, and all class Y fits an X. And this is our Socrates cases, right? And okay, is it really this? Is it always true that anything in this category falls in that category? These are the meta arguments, and I think they're not avoidable. How formal is a question? I do think putting things on the map, Stephen, you asked in Friday, what is the so that for going more formal as opposed to text? And I think map making is really the so that. I didn't catch it Friday, but you cannot put things on a kind of global map if you're just using words, or not as easily, or you cannot know that you're exhaustive or not exhaustive. You cannot cluster as well. You cannot, I think the formalization is actually very important for the giving this impression of, I've seen, it's when you're exploring a map, you want to know what's around there and what am I missing? And knowing how much I've missed is very important to reading a map. And that, I think, cannot be done without formalization, knowing how much I've missed. So for me, that's in scope. And yeah, for me, arguments, claims boil down to, at some point, entities. And as I'm saying now, instances and patterns. They're all instances and patterns. And belonging instances fitting patterns is debated. Some cases it's clear and there's a formal definition, that's great, and sometimes the definition is up for grabs, or there's conflicting definitions, and that's what it's all about. But thinking of it as patterns, I think, is extremely useful for me. And oh yeah, very important, the checks and balances. You mentioned it, Tim, and I totally second that. When we're speaking about values, It's, well, we're never dealing with absolutes. We're dealing with balancing out a good against a good, a bad against a bad, and being able to hold those conversations is also a core requirement for me. So that's it. It's pretty broad.
Is there anything you explicitly exclude where you don't want to go?
I think that going we often had these conversations about representing the conversations versus computations. Doing automated reasoning is something I want to allow, but realizing it is out of scope for me. Strong AI is out of scope for me. Anything that ends up, well, this is equivalent to strong AI, it's like, okay, we're not going there. So truth representation, I want to go very far, but truth computation, no. And the other thing that may be out of scope for me in some ways is trying to be an arbiter of truth. I'm about mapping. Yeah.
Right. That was something I didn't say either, but that's like bottom line for me, and you know,
Yeah.
the actual reason behind it being, I want it to be canonical. So anything that's going to create a risk of people forking off and creating their own version of things is to be avoided at all costs.
Yeah, and I didn't say it because I wasn't thinking about that aspect, but for me, federation is a goal, because expecting a centralized system to be what everybody uses, I don't expect it to ever happen. Though I've been, you know, it happened to Wikipedia, which is great, but I don't, for me, that's something I see as unreachable for me.
So with all the logic you guys mentioned, it's quite, because I'm wondering, like, how do symbolic AI systems, the relation to that? Because if you really dig down into the logic, or as Marc-Antoine said, for the proofs and everything, you're basically at symbolic AI. But that's something you don't want, where you don't want to go, right?
The computation of symbolic AI is not where I want to go, but the representation of symbolic AI for me might very well be in scope, in the sense that for me, the being able to say how exhaustive is my neighborhood map is a question, and it's being able to make that call is a form of computation. So there has to be enough information so I can do that.
So yeah, as far as I understand it, machine computation, or like where argument technologies are going these days, is to have AI decision making, and they create essentially acceptance criteria.
Yeah.
You know, they create claims and acceptance criteria, and it could be probabilistic, or it could be, you know, other kinds of non-exact logic, but they do create something basically deterministic. And that is fully compatible with what we would need to do and try to do to some degree. You know, there may be certain features we don't need, or like we may do it a different way. But in essence, I deal with that or I would deal with this by saying, you know, because we do want to calculate what the truth is. Why do we want to calculate what the truth is? We want to calculate what popular opinion is in order to essentially create priors in terms of things that are spurious, can be hidden out of view, that sort of thing. We want to, or I want to be able to calculate an individual truth, an individual score, with the main goal of being to analyze your own biases, right? Where you say you believe in this, and you say you believe in that, you say you believe in that, and yet when we add it all up, the score it says you should not agree with this thing and you agree with it, or vice versa, right? So essentially to highlight discrepancies in your thinking so you can think through that. And also to see, you know, why other people come to a different conclusion than you. You know, see what are their beliefs and how does that add up to a different score than you. So all these things are essentially, they're automated ways of choosing the truth, right? But the way I work around it is by providing multiple models and not a single view, right? By showing it's just a model and it's not meant to represent the truth. It's supposed to let you think about it.
Agreed on all counts here. The being able to show inconsistencies in one's reasoning is one reason I'm actually, the model should allow for inconsistent claims and beliefs. So I'm sometimes pushing back against, oh, it has to be impossible to model something wrong. It's like, well, no, actually modeling of something wrong is important because I want to show why it's wrong and how it's wrong. Yeah, as I said, prediction market and even prediction badges are absolutely in scope and important.
Stephen, or Josh, do you guys have anything to say about your system, about the systems you're building, like how deep or expressive you want to go?
Yeah, I didn't get the original question, but while listening to this, I do remember that we wrote up these one pages ages ago.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that hasn't really changed much. I found mine again. I'll post it here. I always say transparency first is for me the most important thing. I don't want to formalize. I just want the user to allow to discover what the arguments of other people are, break them up in smaller chunks so you can have a more focused argumentation, and that it opens it up for falsification. That's really my main goal. But by doing so, I hope that people can more easily find common ground because you can more easily agree on smaller chunks as opposed to on these big statements. Yeah, those are my main two ones. And I don't believe that you need that degree of formalization to do these things.
But do you have a line that you don't want to cross with formalization?
Yeah. If doing it manually by a user is on a less formalized form is less work than doing it manually by using formalized form in order to obtain the same results, that's the line I don't want to cross. I mean, the main reason is IT is automation, right? You're trying to automate stuff. If what you're trying to automate in order to enable that, the work placed on the user to formalize more so that you can automate something else, if that work is greater than simply doing the stuff you want to automate manually, why would you go there? So for me to know what to formalize and not to formalize, the concrete use case must be much clearer. Because I'm, for example, on board with formalizing entities. Because yeah, you do want to show what are all the claims about this entity, for example, or merely disambiguation of entities. I mean, there's very real use cases for that, that if you wouldn't do that, yeah, the user interaction would become very problematic at that point. But so it depends on the use cases, whether or not I want to cross a line of formalization. But that's the key trade-off. It's like, how much extra work is it for the user and what do they gain by doing it?
It's a great question to keep asking, and I'm grateful to you for forcing us to finding answers to that. Seriously.
Yeah, I agree. Josh, do you have anything to say about Wysaurus?
I mean, I don't know. I agree with a lot of what everyone's saying. I think we all share a lot of common ground. I think about not only the product as of people's work as a reference resource that folks can go to and look up good arguments, but also what is gained by the journey of using it. Learning how much we don't know, learning that we know less than we thought we did, strengthening our argument muscles. So that's something I think about. And the degree of formalization, I think about the the effort of the user. What we're asking is a very effortful thing, and so I think my a goal I have is to find the right balance that makes the product as impactful for the most people as possible. And my feeling is that could mean that it can't express every argument that a human could express. I could be wrong about that, but I'd rather a system be a little bit imperfect, but help these goals for more people with a greater magnitude than be a perfect argument system in some way. But I think discovering where those lines are is a journey itself. So I don't pretend to have a hard fixed notion of what it will be.
But I realize a lot of this, though I agree with the let's not make it harder for users, and I agree totally. I'm often pushing for more formalization than most people here, because it's not exclusive, right? It's if you allow high formalization and low formalization in the same system, like people will put as much formalization as gives them benefit. And I do want the maximum formalization to be possible. That doesn't mean it has to be required at any given moment. The question is, what does this step of formalization gain us? And sometimes we may not predict the use of more formalization. And I agree, we must not make it necessary unless it offers a gain, and probably not even then. That's the whole progressive formalization line. But that doesn't mean more formalization should not be possible. So that's one argument. And my other thing is, I think if we have the better basic building blocks, the whole, oh, this is too complicated thing may become moot, because proper building blocks may make things simpler. And this is why I keep pushing on. Is there something common to entities, claims? Now I'm working on patterns as my basic, frames and patterns as my basic building block. And I'm thinking with the proper atoms, it might be easier to construct all molecules.
Yeah, and on the trade-off about user effort, one of my beliefs, untested, is the reason these platforms don't take off, don't go further. Well, first of all, there's two important different, there's lots of categories, but two main types of effort for the user. There's the effort of contributing, which is always a pretty heavy overhead, and the more formalization, the more it can be difficult. And there's the effort of reading and understanding, which I think is critical to be, as easy as reading a tweet or that sort of thing. A casual viewer should be able to get what's going on, right? And I think that'll be the majority of users. The untested belief I have is that these don't take off and don't get more contribution because people don't believe in their permanence. People don't believe they're making a permanent impact. Because if you believe that this is the one place everyone's going to go to learn about this thing, people are willing to put in a lot more effort. And so it's easier to get over that hurdle. And so, it's the chicken and egg thing, but that's why I think being canonical will make people much, much, much more willing to spend that time.
The definition of canonical cannot be that it's the central source, because that's the chicken and egg, right? I mean, the question is why isn't everyone using it? Because if everyone uses it, then people will have that sense of permanence. It's
a marketplace problem, right?
Exactly.
It's a two-sided marketplace.
That's not what you mean by canonical, right? I mean, yes, it's one.
There's more than one meaning. Like there's a definition for a canonical claim, which is one use of canonical, and there's a definition for being the canonical source for information on polemics, right? Which is a second use and also applied for me.
But what I'm trying to say is you cannot argue that the reason something is not being used is because people aren't using it. I mean, you can, there's a bit of a snowball effect, but that's not the main, the main reason
right?
people want to start, the main reason people and more people start adopting something that becomes big enough that everyone starts using it. That's the question you need to address. If you
Well, why does Wikipedia succeed? Why does Wikipedia succeed?
I have an idea for to tap into that. Like first, of course, like it's well known and because everybody is using it. What I write into what I contribute is important. But on the other hand, is like it appears in search results. Like individual pages appear in search results, and that's something I didn't find so far for argumentation platforms. Like when I type a question or argument into Google.
Yeah, SEO is horrible in most systems.
Yeah,
like simple
right.
things as each claim a URL they don't have.
But
that is true.
Pop up, then you get a lot of traffic.
Yeah, that's also why.
Right, but I mean, the main point I'm making here is that at this point Wikipedia succeeds because it is Wikipedia, right? Because to go and contribute an article on you know, King whatever somewhere else is
nowadays, but before.
Right, but
well,
so there is a work of creating the that's a marketing thing.
It got SEO, it got good SEO because people started linking to it. Originally it was organic, right? And there was a founder effect and luck and whatever, meaning that people started linking to that instead of something else, some other attempt at canonicality. But very good point on SEO. Like if we need to have, here is the URL you go to, and that is maybe one of the most interesting counter arguments I've heard to my federation view, because otherwise I was going to say that if you have federated, you have permanence without centralization. You're able to make an argument on somewhere that can get integrated into something else. Your argument is still permanent because you have translating lenses. But the SEO is an interesting counter argument. So I'll have to think about that one.
It's also the main reason, by the way, I didn't choose a single page application stack. I mean, it's possible nowadays to override URLs and et cetera, but it makes it more difficult. If you want to focus on claims as a resource on the internet with a unique URI, for me, like static web pages are so much more logical. And it's the same reason, by the way, if you look at originally Stack Exchange, like the design decisions they made in the beginning, that's the exact same reason they picked up ASP.NET as opposed to all the fancy new SPA stacks that were coming out at that time.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, no.
But also, you know, that doesn't, it's not a deal breaker for federation, because you can do what Web 3.0 does, right? When you don't have when everybody has a copy of the truth and yet you have all the concurrency problems, what you do, you elect a server to host the compiled view. You have an official server that's essentially compiling everything in the federation and serving as the SEO machine, basically.
Yeah, no, but when I say federation, it's a more fundamental way that many people can have partial views and host that as their view, as long as they link to one another, and you can create a kind of composite. But for me, there was not necessity of a global join to all the pages representing a concept. And now I'm realizing for SEO reason, maybe there is that necessity. So I will think more about this.
Yeah, and that for me is one of those must not happen things.
Yeah.
It's forks. Yeah, we've had this conversation. I think part of it is just getting down into the details of definitions of way these things can happen, but we'd have to see. I don't want anything that leads to information bubbles, basically, or bias.
I've described how you could avoid information bubbles in federation. I agree that information bubbles are bad. I don't think that's the reason not to have federation, but SEO might be one. But SEO, it's so sick, because that means that centralization is the reason we need centralization. Damn it.
Canonical. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. I'm very happy with the answers I'm getting here. So the next thing I wanted to get into is like, let's set up something so we can have instances of models, of our models, and talk about that. What would you think is a good tool for this? Like immediately Miro popped up in my mind, but are there any other better alternatives?
We can still do instance models in PlantUML, by the way, but I haven't seen much pickup in adoption of PlantUML outside of my using it. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's only one person typing
That's not good.
right now. Yeah.
And then, I mean, the instance is obviously based on the source material, which would be plain text. There's no point in just modeling something as a model for the sake of it. The point of having instances is also that it's actual arguments.
No, I mean more like as a tool to talk about the examples. That's what I was.
Well, plain text for starters would be a good starting point. Then you can at least try to map it manually. If we then need to map it, yeah, we can use PlantUML or just any box and arrows thing, basically.
Yeah. The thing is, like, my motivation was from because we have textual examples already in the spreadsheet, and they get more complicated. Like, it's not easy to talk about them, I think.
Yeah.
And I just want a graphical representation of that.
Yeah, it's basically the question of having a bootstrap tool. And I've been playing a lot with, can I mix Markdown with, for example, PlantUML? And again, that works. But I don't have the links between the text and then this is about building the tool I want, right?
We could use debate graph now, debate map, sorry.
Or just any graphical.
For some things, yeah, not for, yeah.
Well,
you
debate.
could even use diagramming tools because it's only about what we're talking about in these cases.
Yeah, we could use concept maps, argument maps. Not if it's a tree one, because sometimes we're looking at graph of instances, but certainly concept graphs would be appropriate, like CMap tool, for example, perfectly appropriate.
Would it be expressive enough to?
CMap tool is pretty expressive. It does allow links to links, incidentally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because by constructing a new model and trying to figure out how expressive it's going to be, the drawing tool needs to be as expressive for the example.
Well, flexible is
flexible.
Flexibility is the main thing you need. That's why a whiteboard is usually ideal for this. But I mean, the problem if you want to do shit like this on whiteboards is reuse canonicality. You don't have instances you can link to other instances. And I think debate map is probably, if you want some way of having a graph which can also reuse nodes, I think debate map is probably the best way to go for now. Also because everyone here is familiar with it now. Then we just need the ability to set up separate maps, if that's possible. Timothy, maybe you know?
Yeah, it's totally possible. And what you can't do is join separate maps later.
I think that's
just fine. Just temporary examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have random grouping nodes and stuff as well, right? In debate map. And then we can just still say, well, whatever debate map calls it, we can just group stuff under there and then decide later what it represents.
In general, I'm a bit hesitant to use existing argumentation tools for the whole thing, because then we're constraining ourselves.
Well, but we're also highlighting, maybe exactly where the tool needs to go because it can't capture this one, which is exactly how I came up with the economy example. I can't do this.
But then we're not talking about the model anymore. Then we're talking about the tool.
The debate map it's essentially a tree. Instance diagrams or graphs. I'm a bit like,
it's a tree with reusable claims.
Yeah, nonetheless.
And multi-premise. Yeah.
Is there any tooling node, whatever? Because all we need is node with edges and reuse of nodes and hyper edges. Yeah. Like any tool that does that.
And that's what I said. CMap does hyper edges.
Right.
That's why I was proposing it. And yes, we can do it in Miro if worse comes to worse. And that's certainly the freest.
Yeah.
Sorry, are you guys discussing a tool to design the model, to illustrate the model, or to discuss issues related to the design?
To sketch examples that we want to capture in the model.
Example content?
Basically the whiteboard situation that we don't have because we're not meeting in person.
Well, everyone's welcome to, if there's any way Wysaurus can be useful, of course, you know, that's of course open for.
We need a tool that's a bit more flexible, that has a, yeah, that allows to express features that we don't have a model for yet, and that's also not implemented in Wysaurus. So yeah, actually, just I'm looking at CMap. Is that the same technology that you use, Mike, Antoine, for the
No.
current? No.
No, I'm using PlantUML right now for my class diagrams, and it can do instance diagrams. So that's absolutely a possibility, but it means we don't have any visual control.
Yeah, we need visual control.
And so the options are either dot with manual XY, which is a bit ridiculous. So that's the pure text view, or something purely visual like Miro, and it is a possible option. And CMap is a bit in between. I like the fact that CMap has, you know, the real notion of n-ary links and link to link and all this, but you have visual control. I think it's that way a possible option.
Is it collaborative?
Yes.
CMap? Okay.
It's desktop, it's not web-based. You have to download the desktop app, and yes, it is free.
You can give it a try.
Then how is it collaborative?
There's a central server, so you all say we're all working on this map under this name on this central server, and so it's collaborative. It's internet-based, but it's not web-based.
It's not like real time like Google Docs.
It is.
Is? Oh.
It's very old technology, but it was well done a long time ago.
I think we're giving it a try as another tool in our toolbox. And if it doesn't work for us, then we switch to something else.
Sure. And I'd say that way, if it doesn't work, let's go Miro, because I think flexible is important when we are doing initial design. And maybe we'll discover, oh, we're doing trees anyway, so then let's use the bait map, yeah? Or if all we're doing is, all you need is trees, which I don't believe.
Well, no, you need graphs, really. That's the main problem where I always got stuck with using any tree mapping tool. A concept mapping tool is reuse of claims.
Yep. Absolutely.
But does CMap solve that anyhow? Can you like collapse if
Yes.
you reuse nodes? Are they collapsible, or what happens?
Do you have it installed, Marc-Antoine? Maybe we can just show it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me do that. I'll admit, I will show it, and I use it, but I haven't used it enough to be really good at it. So we'll have, it's like, you'll see me struggling, but that's okay. But I know it can be done. Because I have done it sometimes. So my CMaps. There's CMaps in the cloud, but that's not what I want. What's going on? Yes. Okay, so I guess I have to create one. New CMap. Maybe I should make it in the cloud so we can see the collaborative aspect, but let's start with that.
Yeah, let's start with just that.
Yeah. Let's see. So double click to create a concept. So this is, let's start with the classic Socrates as an entity and human as an entity and mortal as an entity. And then if I click, I can draw an arrow from Socrates to human and from human to mortal, and is all R, and then I can have a derived and then there's even the line can have style, thickness. I can make this one show it's a derived link. Should have been able, it should have acted on both, but because this thing is, what is cute is I can now say this is
what is a derived link? Because I mean,
I'm just making concepts on the fly. Yes.
oh, okay, but they're not arguments. They're like,
yeah, and look at this. Here's
oh, cool. Yeah.
I even have a link towards the label of the link, and can change this, and we can have a direction. And why doesn't it have?
And the big question: can you reuse? Can you try adding human to modus ponens? Not that that makes sense in any way, but
what do you mean? Oh yeah, sure. You mean do this? No, that's not what you mean. I think
that is what I mean.
Okay,
but I mean,
sure.
To keep that still, so this gets out of hand. That's the whole problem. That this doesn't work. you
what do you mean?
If you start mapping more complicated things with actual reuse, your entire map becomes a nightmare.
One second. I want to show you something. Format. Let me. No, I'm not taking a break. Damn it. Let me, styles. Let me remember how to do this. But yes, there is an answer to this.
You mean like automatic graph layouts, or
no?
There is no one way to lay out. The problem is you can't show everything basically.
No. But it's okay. There's what I can do is create a new map, and then I can take concepts from one map and put them in another, and then say, okay, only show these concepts. Like I can take a subset of concepts, and then links will carry or not. So I'm
like
trying
the
to
induced subgraph, basically.
Yes, you can do induced subgraph, and I'm trying to remember how, but a new CMap, and let me copier, coller. So I've copier, coller. Whoops. Oh, it's
yeah, it's on top. Can you then rename human, for example?
Yeah, it seems I can, and that's bad because I should be able to
so they're not
the same.
links.
And it should have carried the link. So I'm disappointed here.
Maybe it's not copy paste then. Maybe copy paste was the wrong action.
It's possible.
Special paste or link or
2, 6.
Maybe this is the first tool we need to develop before we do argument maps.
This part debate map sort of does. Yeah.
I was thinking about that, like just create the most general flexible tool and then use that.
Oh.
But the main problem is always adaptive visualizations, really. Once you start doing complicated things like this.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. Linked new imbriqué. I'm trying to remember what that is. I don't think that'll work, but I'll try. Nope, that didn't work.
I mean, for tiny examples, we can always create a second graph within the same sheet, and then if we update it manually, right, copy paste and keep it consistent.
Yeah, it's all about temporary examples, so everybody knows what we're talking about. So I think this tool is pretty good. We should give it a try.
There was something about nested links. I have to, but I don't remember how to do this. Concepteur présent, prise de vue. There was something that allowed me to have references between maps. I have to revisit. Sorry, it's been a while.
But it's cool. It's like a generalized hypergraph editor, right?
Yeah, it is. It is a generalized hypergraph, and it's still visually manipulatable, and you carry links, and so it's fairly flexible. But there's something more that's doable, and I'm trying to remember what it is. Fuse and create a nested. Yes, there's nested links. That is cool. And
Well,
then
this grouping
Yeah.
is also something cool already. I haven't seen in other tools.
Yeah, there's grouping.
Yeah, I'm convinced we should give it a try.
Can you ungroup the thing now, the question mark? Can you now link human to mortal or ABC?
Oops, sorry.
And then ungroup? It would be neat if these get hidden.
They do. Oh, I see what you're saying. That's a choice, I think. It's saying it's relevant to things in the group, so it's relevant to the group.
It's funny,
Yeah.
it really reminds me of the UI from the first boost with dragging the arrows from this dragging.
Yeah, of course they show.
And we can link to the group instead of the unit within the group.
We can give it a try.
I'm not saying we have to use this. It's just the best tool I know in that space.
Yeah, it's more complete than others that I've tried.
It's ancient. It's been around for bloody ever.
Yeah, but nowadays I'm very tempted to only try online tools. But yeah, I know. They were good desktop tools back in the day.
Yeah. Java, by the way. And all the
Swing.
Yep, Swing. all the goods and bads of that era.
I have nightmares of the certificate test, the was a certified Java developer Swing questions. Oh God.
I feel you. I've done Swing UI. Yep. I'm happy I'm not doing Swing UI now. But you know what? They got something working well with this, which is
and
amusing.
Scala had a very good abstraction over Swing.
Of course it does. I'm around people who are pushing Graal VM a lot these days as the lingua franca of a lot of things. And then people who are pushing WASM as the lingua franca of the lot of things, like this whole one virtual machine to rule them all mentality. It's like, again, why? Data is our lingua franca, not code. Anyway, that's the microservice guy talking. So we can do that next time. Do we want to continue now? I have a hard stop in a half hour. Could stay, but we could also close now.
I gotta take off. Nice to see all your faces again
now too,
and hear your voices.
Me too.
Looking forward to more.
Yeah, let's start.
Right.
See you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you Friday. So yeah, I'm voting for a close, actually, if you don't mind.
Yeah, me too.
It's a nice ending point. And I still need to rewatch the, well, not rewatch, I need to watch the meeting from yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, by the way, in YouTube, there's this YouTube Studio thing. You can trim the recordings. So I'm usually trimming off the beginning. That works.
Thank you.
Yep.
See you.
Okay.
Excellent.
See you on Friday.
See you on Friday.
Yeah.
Bye.